GM. GM. So, talked about this on yesterday's live stream. We have an inside week within an inside week within an inside week, right? So we had this weekly candle, started December. Next week, traded within it, didn't take the high or the low. Next week, traded within the original one. It did take the high of this week, but again, didn't take the original high or low. And then this week is trading within last week, which is within the previous 2 weeks ago. And then it's Sunday, the 31st of December, by the way, GM. And we're about to fucking have the yearly candle close with an inside week, inside an inside week, inside an inside week. It's triple inception. So, safe to say, a fucking massive move is coming. Don't overcomplicate it. That move is probably going to be to the upside, probably 80% likely. So it doesn't mean you have to go long. Far from it. You can only go long if you have a system that tells you to go long, right? But what I think the best approach is to not exit any of your bags yet if you're waiting for them, right? Because what will happen if we go up is that Bitcoin will pump. Let's say it pumps to 48K. And even if it reverses from there on the ETF approval, that last pump, once it sells off, the profits from that will flow down into alts and we'll see alt rotations, right? So I think a lot of people are... Look, most of you probably hold mostly alts, right? If you hold Bitcoin, it's simple. Just keep holding your Bitcoin. Don't sell it until the cycle's over, right? If you hold altcoins, if you're holding altcoins, you've always got one eye open for when you should take some profit. That's the point. Alts literally only exist to generate profit. Bitcoin, you could choose to hold it forever if you wanted to, right? Not really what I would do or necessarily what I would recommend. There should always be a part of you that's willing to take profit even on your BTC, but for me, that's months away and probably 5x away in price, right? To actually sell a lot of Bitcoin, you need to be sure the price is way, way, way over and above, like it was in 2021. And it's similar, right? If, for whatever reason, you believe, it's pretty simple. You have like an average running through the 2021 and 22 markets. Well, I should say, not including this. If we're talking over here, is this the time to sell? Well, yeah, because the Fed came out and said we're going to raise rates. The party was over, big rejection. We rejected off a massive rejection candle. And over here at 60K, you can say, yes, I'm going to sell some Bitcoin because it's not about whether it goes higher or not. It's about time. The odds are that for a long time, it's going to underperform. So even if it didn't have the FTX collapse, it might have just come down to here and there and then come back up. And we could have just traded in here all this time, but we would still be where we are now, roughly, right? And in any of those cases, if you've got a long period of underperformance coming, probable, right? You don't never know for sure, but highly probable, then yeah, you want to exit. And so this is the big difference. So let's say we get a sell the news event, pushes up, sell the news, down we go. Is that time to sell? Should you have sold there? Are you in for a period of long underperformance? No. Because it's just going to fucking rip again at a later date. Every path you can think of, and in my 2024 preview, there's going to be several different paths. Yeah. I'll do the preview tomorrow, I guess. I'll do the review of 2023 today. That's going to be today's live stream, reviewing 2023 GM. There won't be a weekly outlook as such, but it will be covered in the video. right? I'm covering what's happening right now and what I think is going to happen for the next week. Because this video is sort of like weekly outlook now. It's going to be a bit longer. It doesn't, this isn't like New Year's Eve daily levels. And I wouldn't really recommend that anybody trades heavily on New Year's Eve. So looking ahead to where we're going next, I want to set a bit of context and remind you to stay. I mean, here's the thing. You need to keep your, what's the word? Perspective. Keeping perspective is very important here. Because we can have a really brutal sell-off. We could have something similar. I mean, this is a good example. That could be exactly what we do. We could push up above, brutal three or 4 week flush, all the way from 48 down to 33, and it happens fast, so it's bloody and stops out a bunch of people on leverage, and then boom, we rip, right, all the way up, and away we go. Actually, it would be, where are we? There. Right? And that would put you at fucking all-time high knocking on the door. This is so I see so many people saying the same thing. Buy the rumor, sell the news is basically consensus for the ETF. And it's probably buy the rumor, buy the news. Because look where we are. So here's the thing that people have, in my opinion, completely overlooked. It's not about the ETF. It's not about whether the ETF is definitely sell the news or not. It's far more about what does the market look like going into the ETF. And when we pushed up, it's so fucking bullish. When we pushed up here in late November going into December, everyone was talking about 50k, 55k. We could do all-time high before ETF, right? Because it's still 4 weeks minimum, 4 or 5 weeks before the ETF over here, right? And we were already touching 45. So nobody thought, except me, no, it wasn't just me. Definitely many people said. But I was very clear in saying that we wouldn't go above 45, we wouldn't go below 40, right? That was not magic. That was options expiry, the biggest one of the year. That is now past. We can go beyond that, or we can go below. But at this point, most people are talking about let's go 50, let's go 55, whatever, which is totally fine and normal. Super strong rally. We consolidated on the way up. This wasn't impulse. This was upward sloping accumulation, which we talked a lot about as well. I talked about this after the big pump, upward sloping accumulation. Away we go. We've just now put in a 4-week bullish pennant in the strongest Bitcoin trend that I can remember. It's stronger than this one, right? So this is the strongest Bitcoin trend I can remember from an early bull perspective. And obviously this impulsive part was obviously stronger here. But in terms of the stage of the market we're at, where we're coming out of a bear market, by this point, this was full-blown consensus bull market. There's still people who don't think we're in a bull market, right? Still people think 12K is coming and this is all just an ETF fake out pump and it's a bull trap and they won't trap me. Cool. First of all, it's not a bull trap, right? It's a reversion. It's a mean reversion. Bitcoin's fair value is something around 50K. That's not me making that up. There's 2 separate models. There's one which is from a guy, Julian Timmer, who is the head of global macro at Fidelity. Fidelity are the ones who are 3rd largest asset manager in the world and are putting in an ETF. This guy is not like a mouthpiece for Fidelity. He's a legitimate crypto, Bitcoin fan and has covered it for years. This is not oh, we're riding the ETF hype. No, this guy's been a Bitcoin believer for 7 or 8 years. And another one by Tim Peterson, who has a Metcalfe's law model, which is about network adoption, network effects, right? Both of those models put fair value of BTC around 50k. And that we go below it, we deviate below it, we go significantly above it. And that since 2021, that, if I was to draw that right through, right? If you were to draw it through, that's the worst drawn line ever. If you were to draw it through, it's like that. Like fair value is probably slightly lower than that. Like that, 50k, right? So we're still below that. The tendency is to go above and below whatever moving average it is. It doesn't matter how you measure it. The tendency of every market is to go both above and below the average, right? That's what mean reversion, that's where it comes from. You can't mean revert if you never overextend. If you don't deviate from the mean, you can't mean revert. So most people who are saying that this has to go down are sidelined. And I know them, and some of them who have a lot of money, some of them who are not necessarily bad traders, but they believed in the whole 2023 recession thesis and they couldn't change their mind. And they didn't look to the future. They were stuck in the present and the past instead of remembering that markets are forward-looking. And they're sidelined. So they wanted to go down. They need it to go down. That doesn't mean it's going to go down. Nothing, literally nothing, zero, nothing about the price action says we're going down. Yet everyone says we're going down. And then they point out, look, funding rates and open interest and but that's all potential. You have to understand. High funding rates, high open interest means we are bullish as fuck. It means people are paying a premium to get long. It means they're longing their longs. That's all good as long as the market goes up. When, and it will eventually go down, when the market starts to go down, that can then snowball into a liquidation candle. But your job is not to sit and predict that beforehand. Your job is to get out at the first sign of real danger. And there is no sign of real danger here. Now, danger can come very fast. And if you're not a trader who's in the market all the time, right, then yeah, you probably want to, if you're a trader who's not in the market all the time, right, if you're not watching the market every day, like many of us do here, like I do, that's fine. If you're an investor, cool. But if you're an investor, you don't have to worry about that liquidation candle because you're not going to be in it, right? Anybody using any amount of leverage should be watching the market like a hawk. If not, you deserve to lose all your money. If you're using any amount of leverage, that means if you've got 10 grand, but you've got 11 grand of positions open, right? You've 10k net worth and you've got 11 grand of positions open, you need to be watching the market. Because it's not about whether you lose all your money. It's just a terrible, terrible, unprofessional attitude. The only people who should, just buy, like if you buy spot and chill and you're busy and you're working and you're grinding and you're DCAing into your spot bags, you don't have to look at the market every day. In fact, it's probably a detriment for you to look at the market every day because every day there's just going to be opportunities for you to panic and sell or read some bullshit on Twitter from some dickhead who tells you to sell the news before the news even came and doesn't know what the news is, right? There's a lot of differing opinions too. So the market, so many people are uneducated. I shared a poll. I saw a poll on Twitter the other day from a guy who's like a Bitcoin guy and he's got like 30,000 followers. So this is not like this isn't Jim Cramer. This isn't like Cathie Wood or Michael Saylor. This isn't like a well-known person. I didn't know this guy like 3 weeks ago. Just another, semi-big influencer on Twitter. So he's 30,000 followers. He exclusively talks about Bitcoin. So he must have a following that is pretty crypto native, right? Very, very, very unlikely that this guy has this massive following of normies. If he's got 30,000 followers, he's not really well known, and he talks exclusively about Bitcoin, yeah? And he put up a poll asking people, will the Bitcoin ETF get approved on or before the 10th of January, which is the deadline? 30% of people said no. 30% of people who are in crypto don't think it's going to get approved. And there was 2,000 or 3,000 votes, so it was significant, right? And I couldn't believe it. I would have thought that would be more in line with the actual odds, which is 90, 95%. Not saying this isn't, will Bitcoin be at 100K? This is just, will it be approved? 30% said no. That was fucking baffling to me, right? And the question then is like, it's not about whether the ETF is going to get approved or not approved. Obviously, it could be rejected and all that, but that's like, you don't bet on the 5% or lower chance. And it doesn't mean you have to bet on the approval, because it can be true also that the majority of the Bitcoin ETF pre-approval is priced in. Of course. BlackRock applied in June. Of course, it's mostly priced in so far, but you can't price in the actual approval because nobody knows what that's going to look like. You can't also price in what way it gets approved. The approval is not sell the news. The launch is sell the news. Potentially, again, it might not be, but with the move up we've had, probably a bunch of people are going to sell when it goes live. But everyone's assuming, again, wrongly, not everyone, but the majority of people think that when that tweet comes out saying BlackRock ETF plus 6 others are approved, they think that means, exit all markets. Approval. It's done. No. If they come out and say ETFs are approved and they will start trading in the first week of February, right? That gives 3 more weeks. 3 more weeks of rampant advertising by BlackRock, who literally got Google to change the laws, right? So Google have changed the laws to allow advertising. Google ETF Bitcoin ads. Google updated its ad policy on the 11th of December, or at least this was when the article was, right? Updates its ad policy ahead of ETF approvals, allowing advertisers to offer ads for cryptocurrency coin trusts, aka ETFs. This has never been done before. They've done it now, and BlackRock are in the game. BlackRock, Fidelity, and don't forget, the APs, the authorized participants who are going to be allowed to invest through this, which each of the applicants will name, includes Jane Street, one of the biggest market makers, and JP Morgan. Don't need to tell you who JP Morgan are. So, and that's through BlackRock. So it's not just BlackRock, it's also JP Morgan that are getting exposure into this. So basically, all the big institutions are going to be playing in this game. And so Google shareholders. See where not individual, institutional shareholders, Vanguard, BlackRock, and a bunch of others. So BlackRock owns 6%, let's call it 7%, 6.7, of Google. Google changed their laws, changed their rules to allow these ETF providers to advertise. That goes live on the 29th of January. Not the 10th, the 29th. It's not conspiracy to say that BlackRock have got Google to change this. They are literally shareholders of Google. They are launching an ETF, which they want to make fucking millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of fees off of. And they've got Google to change the rules, so that they can advertise. Do you think that they're going to want the market to have nuked before the 29th of January so that they can start advertising to this thing that's wrecked. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Now, BlackRock also, they don't control the market. That is true. A lot of people play the full conspiracy thinking that BlackRock manipulate everything. No, but they are the biggest. They do have a lot of power and sway. But if that law, like, I don't believe in coincidences when it comes to finance, right? Because these big institutions do not leave stuff to chance. So why is Google only changing the law or the rule? Stop saying law, it's not the government. On the 29th of January. Wouldn't they change it on like the 1st of January? So that when it goes live or it gets approved, they can start advertising right away. Well, that would tell me that the big players are planning to start advertising heavily, because Google's the biggest ad medium in the world, right? At the end of January. So maybe, these insiders, i.e. BlackRock, who have had 576 ETFs applied for and have had 575 of them approved, so they've only ever had one rejected, that would tell me that they probably know more than we do. And they probably think that, yeah, the approval will come in early January, but it won't go live for maybe even a few weeks after. Right? That would make sense. Because ETFs don't get approved on Monday and then start trading on Monday. They can start trading very fast. That is true. They can trade within a few days, but also it can take a few weeks. It depends. Every situation is different. So let's imagine that the spot ETF is much more complex than anything that came before. It's more complex than the CME futures. It's much more complex than the futures ETF. Far more complex because it involves trusts and buying real Bitcoin, not just longing futures contracts. So probably a safe assumption to make would be that there's going to be a period where it has to get all set up and integrated, and especially if they approve 6 or 7 of them, it's probably not just going to happen overnight. So maybe, okay, cool, gets approved 10th of January, right? And SEC says, yeah, you can start trading live as of 3 weeks from the date, whatever. 3rd of February, 5th of February, who knows? That's when the real fever season will start, because until the actual go live date, there's going to be even more anticipation of the actual flows that come in. Right? If the goal is to dump on new participants, well, you can't dump on them until it goes live. And approval doesn't mean that you have your exit liquidity. Approval means there will be exit liquidity coming soon, but not yet. Until the actual shares go live and the BlackRock Trust goes live, and they can actually call their clients up and say, hey, we've got this new thing, fucking buy a bunch of it. Until that actually happens, nobody can dump. You can't actually dump on the people. Now, you could sell the news itself, but then you're selling before people have started buying, which doesn't quite make sense. It can happen. Anything can happen, but doesn't really make that much sense to me. So most people are kind of just basing it off of the idea that they think it should go down. And eventually price will go down, but nothing about price action is saying that. Right? So I just think, at least when I see it this way, I'm certainly not always right, but from my reading of it so far, I don't see how that this is just automatically sell the news when we haven't had the news yet, or the actual event and the actual products go live. And so I think we've still got plenty of room to go a lot higher, just in simple terms. And when we were going up here at the start of December, and we'll zoom in on it on like a daily chart. All right, when it started to break out of this base that it set, this nice upward sloping, and it pushed up there with all these big inefficient candles. So, all right, okay, we're moving up here with no pullbacks. We're still a month away from the earliest ETF approval, which is the 8th of January over here. Right? And when we were here and price looked like this, it was like, all right, yeah, this could get a bit ropey, because if we keep going into the 8th, that's when you're looking back and you're like, right, that's, price is pretty fucking overextended here. How many more buyers are going to come in after the ETF goes live? Well, that's difficult, because people are just in more and more and more profit, and just general profit taking would say, yeah, then we could really see a significant sell-off. But we haven't done that, right? What we've done instead is go sideways for like 3 weeks and build quite a solid base. And so I look at that and I think it's not looking anywhere near as frothy as it could have. Now, the altcoin market has got a bit frothy. And if you're looking at altcoins relative to Bitcoin, yeah, like altcoins, a lot of them are overextended and can probably underperform. But BTC itself has just chilled and consolidated near the highs. So until it starts breaking out, now as soon as it breaks above 45, that's when you have to look at, right, as soon as we make new highs, anything could happen. It could start rejecting. People could start selling, for sure. But that hasn't happened yet. And so it doesn't really make sense to sell here. If you're a spot holder from lower and you're not using leverage, just wait for the actual ETF. If you're over leveraged and you're getting long at 42.5 now, well, you have to trade it very short term, because your upside is, relatively limited, and your downside is, 36, 34, 33. It could go down for sure after. But even that, like if it goes to 40, you're probably stopped out because you're trying to use fucking leverage. So the type of participant who's at risk is the same type of participant who's always at risk, the over-leveraged apes. But everyone else is fine, just watching it, saying, okay, let's wait and see. Let's see how this goes. So that's my reading on it right now. And, if we were at 55 or 52, let's say, if we were at 52, not 42, I would be much more like, yeah, this is really overextended before. This is getting really front run. This is really getting probably a little bit too frothy. But we don't have that. We're at 42. And we were at 42 4 weeks ago. And so it looks pretty healthy to me overall. Now, we might nuke. That's always a possibility. But again, if you're a spot holder and you're holding Bitcoin for the cycle, and we drop to 32, 33, that's a great buying opportunity. Not selling. Because unless the whole thing is just one big bull trap, and the ETF was always going to be mega bearish, and everyone's going to front run and exit beforehand, and that's it, Bitcoin never goes higher, okay. But for me, if we were touching all-time highs, that would make more sense. If we had pushed all the way to 65 before the ETF, and we were sitting here at 65 or 58 or 61, I'd be like, right, okay, yeah, that's risky, because we're at a very, we would be at a significant previous resistance, an area where people would definitely seek to take some profit. But we're not there. We're kind of in the middle. And so even if we go to 46 and then down to 34 and 36, that's not really any reason to sell your long-term spot bags. Certainly I'm not going to do it. Because that will just be, all right, it was sell the news in the fucking meantime, but we'll just consolidate and we'll go higher after the halving or whatever, right? And so are you really going to fuck around for this little part here, when that's just one path of all the potential paths? You also have the path that I showed earlier where it could be this. It could be like a a sharp sell-off, but then it just fucking smashes higher. And so, are you really going to sell this and buy back here? And that takes extreme market timing. Trying to time the market is generally not a good plan for BTC in an early bull market, because that's just you're adding extra complexity for no reason. And so I think as I've said now for weeks and weeks and weeks, if you're spot only, long only, just wait. You have the luxury of waiting. Right? We're not late in the cycle. We're early in the cycle. And I don't see any reason to panic. In fact, you should be, gathering your capital on the side and having it stacked and ready, because any big leverage shakeout we get, if a bunch of that open interest, and there's a lot, CME futures especially, there's over 5 billion, that's up from 2 billion, there's 3 billion of added OI in the last few weeks. After the ETF goes live, a lot of that's going to unwind. And then the over-leveraged apes on Bybit and Binance and OKX and all that, a lot of that's going to get shaken out, but that's a buying opportunity, not a selling opportunity. So I think people have just kind of lost their focus, really. And probably it's not going to end that well for them. Now, I have no idea where price is going to go. I never do. You can only play probabilities. But I do think that selling now is premature. And certainly shorting is just the worst thing you could do. Because if you're to sell here, you're saying that you think the market's going to go down. But then take it the other way. If you shorted it, would you feel comfortable shorting here? Right? Because if you're saying that it's sell the news, that means people who also think that are going to short it. Because we know what people are like. They cannot help but make bad decisions and fucking put their opinion in and try and be right. Like, oh yeah, well, if it's going to be selling news, I want to short this, ride this fucking thing down. Shorting here with an inside week and an inside week and an inside week after an impulsive move up, where Bitcoin's building energy in an uptrend, with the biggest catalyst it's probably ever had. That's just asking to get absolutely blown out on the shorts, right? So overall, I think, the same thing as always, patience is required. And then we go to lower time frames. We've had that nice 200 EMA touch, which I've talked about and have been waiting for. And we got that. And we touched it. And we pushed up. And we retested it. And we held. And we're holding up. And we're pushing higher. Right? It's still just compressing. It's not in an uptrend here on the low time frames. It's not really in a downtrend either. It's just compressing sideways. Higher lows, but lower highs. Compression. It's a pennant. Classic pennant. And when you compress with low volatility like we have, and declining volume like we have, after an impulsive move higher, that's classic price action continuation. So the only continuation to expect here, or the only path to expect here from a price action perspective, is continuation higher, not lower. Now it can go lower, because anything can happen, but the more likely path is up, not down. And so having the luxury of owning Bitcoin from 17 and 20 and 23 and 26 and 30, I'm just going to keep holding. And, after we see some more information come in, then we can look at what's going to happen next. And as we go into now the end of the year, this is the last day of 2023, I don't expect a whole lot to happen today. If I had to guess, I would say that we see pretty significant rally into the yearly close, because I'm still very confident that the yearly open starts with green, because there's so much pent up demand and there's so much optimism for 2024, right? Optimism, not necessarily euphoria. This market's not euphoric. You're not seeing all the signs of a top. So optimism is not a bad thing. We go to 2024 and people are like, wait a minute, this is a halving year. This is ETF coming. These are the conditions when Bitcoin does well, we go to January 1, 2024, and Bitcoin is at 42,500. Wow. Well, I should get long Bitcoin. I should buy some Bitcoin because the odds are that in a halving year, it's going to finish significantly higher than it started. And you're going to see a lot of these January 1 flows, I believe, that push the market higher. Now, it's also true that we could end up with an early year move, right? Because of these flows that are going to come in and chase it in January. We could do all this, right? And then fucking fully round trip it. And everyone's back and they run that whole thing back down and get wrecked. That can happen. But I think this part is quite a high probability. I don't know how high it goes. Maybe it just goes to 45 and rejects. But the odds are much greater that we see a January pump. Early January pump. Especially because the ETF is yet to come. We could go up into the approval. We could keep going up after the approval. We could go up into the start of February. And then it could get bloody. Q1 could be messy, which I also think, right? December 2022, I was talking about how the market was just way too bearish and how things were much more likely to go up than down. Because at the end of 2022, everyone was really bearish and it set up a good 2023. End of 2023, everyone, at least in crypto, the normies are just not here yet, but in crypto, everyone's, really optimistic, really bullish for next year. If you ask 100 people, 95 of them are going to say 2024, yeah, good year, bullish, bull market, halving, etc. So I do think 2024 will have some tricky parts. I don't think it's going to be up only necessarily, but I think the beginning is more likely to be up, right? And we start off bullish, and then maybe Q1, right, becomes a lot more messy later on. And Q1 is actually quite bad overall. Maybe we even finish Q1 down. Maybe we even finish it like there at the end of Q1. And we start like here. We've finished flat with a big move up, big move down. And 2024 doesn't start the way people think it's going to start. But it's probably going to begin with a rally, begin with green. That's my expectation. So until you see some signs, and the clearest sign for me would be that the thing we've been doing all the way since October, which is following this 4-hour trend, right? And we've now had our first touch of the 200, which typically offers really good support, right? Just like when we touched the 50 for the first time, it produced new highs. Then we touched the 100 for the first time, hugged it 2 or 3 times, and it produced big move up. Now we're touching the 200 for the first time, and we touched it twice. Maybe we come back down again, but I think again that's going to produce new highs. Once the 4-hour trend gets lost, that's when you can say, okay, cool. Bitcoin probably done. But if we lose the 4-hour trend, right, what's probably going to happen then is Bitcoin's going to have this little bounce. Also actually going to run really hard because that's what they do once Bitcoin has lost its trend. And then maybe we go into a deeper correction. Like we have, anytime we have strong trends, and even you can see here, like this one had a deep dip into the 200, it held new highs. There's your time to de-risk if you want to, or when it goes to the highs and loses the highs, that's the time to. Not here, not when we're touching the 200, which is where we are now. It's after the reaction. Because you can either have a strong reaction or a weak reaction. That was a strong reaction. This is a weak one, right? Down to the 200, didn't really respect it. Below it, we still got the bounce, but that was obviously a time to de-risk. Same as the BlackRock pump, right? We got to the 200, no great reaction of it, lost it, chopped around, and it ended up flushing. So things will move a lot faster. That is definitely true because we do have more leverage build up. We do have more short-term speculators with positions open. And, when that move comes, the downside move, if the ETF is sell the news or there's even a surprise rejection or whatever, yeah, it's going to move fast. That's why you don't use leverage. It's going to flush fast. You might wake up one morning and Bitcoin's down 10%. Yes, definitely possible. But in the context of the cycle, if we go to 44 and reject, and you wake up the next day and we're at 37, right? If you're in spot, you can't get liquidated. And you should be looking at, how do I buy more at 36 or 34 or 33 or whatever, once all the leverage gets flushed out. Because in the context of the cycle, it's actually a buying opportunity, not a selling opportunity, right? So that's my view going into end of the year and start of next year. GM, see you at 5 p.m. UTC, regular time for the 2023 review. GM.